All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 306 Fantasy Football Podcast. We're recording here after work Wednesday, January 18th. Our days just keep getting jumbled around, but it's kind of this Wednesday time has been kind of working out for us here, especially with no Thursday football. But we got episode number 77. We got a few topics to take care of here. We're going to recap a little bit of the previous week, and then we'll kind of get into our divisional week of the NFL playoffs. So before we get things started here, we'll say hello to the gentleman there. We'll start with Zach. Zach, how's the last of the week been treating you?
It's been good. I had a lot of fun this weekend watching the football games. My wife was unfortunately under the weather, so I got a lot of coach time and a lot of football time. So I guess her loss was, in a sense, my gain.
Husband of the year there, Zach, attaboy. Armin, how about you? What's the week been looking like?
Oh, it's been a week, basketball. I had a little bit of a stomach bug myself, so yesterday I was not doing the greatest. So thankful that we're recording on the Wednesday night this week, because man, yesterday it felt just awful. Felt all day like I was gonna either throw up or poop or something. I don't know.
So I got to mention this because I just thought of this and it made me laugh. So was it last episode, Armin? You weren't feeling well, right?
Yeah.
And then the episode before that, so I got a text from one of my friends, and she listens to the pod every week, and she goes, "Okay, now I'm putting the dots together. Armin didn't feel good this week, and he ate moldy bread the week before. Maybe we found out you can't eat mold. That's why." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, I didn't even think of that. That is so funny." So I text her just like literally, ha 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 ha. I just couldn't even put it out because I was like, there we go. Maybe that's why Armin's sick, because he was crushing moldy bread. So maybe got some residual stomach bug there from the mold, Armin.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Just ripping apart my immune system and leaving me out to dry.
Our science experiment worked. This last week's talking about science, but I had my own class this past week, so I was focused in the books big time with my number 8 of 10 master's classes. So I'm seeing the horizon, which has been nice. This one's been a lot of fun so far. We're actually studying something that I'm pretty interested in, so that's good. But then classes finished on Saturday at 3:30. So it was like literally classes finished, jumped in the truck, got home as quick as I could to start watching some football. And man, we got treated to some football games. I can't remember a weekend of wildcard football that was as entertaining as these games. I had a lot of fun watching them, kind of like what Zach had mentioned. So speaking of playoff football, we had our charity bracket challenge kick off at 3:30 on Saturday, and we had a lot of contestants, which has been really nice to see. Obviously, all that money going into charity. First place is taking home their choice of a signed jersey. Then we also have a nice care package from 22 Fresh going to second place, and third place is going to get a 306 fantasy football care package. So lots of contestants in there, and so far we still have 4 perfect brackets. And this one's kind of cool because all 4 have different teams winning the championship, if I'm not mistaken. But Joey Carrier, myself, so we got 2 carriers in there still going at it. We also have Tim Stewart, who is also in our charity league. So Tim Stewart finding success as well in the bracket challenge. And then we have Leaf Larson as well. So we have 4 teams that are still perfect. We have lots of people that were near perfect, 5 of 6. And then several that 4 of 6, and then a couple 3 of 6. So lots of people still in the mix here. It was pretty neat to see how many people came in and the wide variety of different brackets we can get. And we'll obviously keep you up to date with the different brackets as we progress throughout the week. But kickstarting things off here, we have our 22 Fresh quick question of the week. And this is our divisional week. And I always find this one fun because obviously if you're paying attention to football right now, there's not a lot of fantasy to talk about. You might be looking deep dive into your 2023 draft classes. Maybe if you're a dynasty guy, maybe you're just watching and doing a little DFS or a little prop bets, or maybe you're just watching the players and thinking, oh, I got to target those guys in the offseason. And that's kind of where we're going out with this question. So who's a player that based on their performance during the wildcard weekend has either risen or dropped for the next upcoming draft season? So maybe it's somebody you want to trade for in the offseason. Maybe it's somebody that you're kind of keeping your eyes on for those draft boards on like some sleeper picks, or maybe it's some people that you're kind of wiping your hands off altogether. So we'll start this one off with Zach because I really like this one, Zach. I think this one is interesting depending on what the Giants end up doing this offseason.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. This fella here helped me in a big way this past weekend with our FanDuel lineup. But Isaiah Hodgins is somebody that has come on really strong as of late for the Giants after coming over from Buffalo as, I believe, a free agent. I think he was waived mid-season. And Isaiah is somebody that I could possibly see coming in next season if the chips fall in the right way as the Giants' number one receiver. This is assuming that they don't bring anybody in either through free agency or through the draft to supplant him. But the likes of Richie James Jr., Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, if he's still on that team come September.
Hey, don't forget Kenny Golladay, okay?
That's right. Kenny Golladay does exist. You're right. And Wan'Dale Robinson. Out of that list, not many of those names are inspiring too much hope, with the exception of maybe Wan'Dale Robinson, who's a rookie this year, but been on IR for most of the season. So Hodgins is somebody that Daniel Jones seems to like and is somebody that could possibly be a top 1 or 2 receiver for that team going forward.
Especially because I think they're going to bring back Daniel Jones. I think he played himself into even if it's a short-term contract, I think he got himself into a contract with the Giants. That's obviously depending on whether he chooses to leave or they franchise or whatever it looks like. But I definitely think he's played well enough. And honestly, I don't think he could have had a better game against the Vikings. He played exceptional football. But we'll maybe talk about him a little bit more later on as we progress throughout the episode. But Armin, I like yours here because this is a guy that could be drafted second in his position in drafts this upcoming season, and very young too. So if you're talking dynasties, might be a guy that might be a little bit interested in going after. But I like this one a lot because he might be, in my eyes, he could be rated the second tight end this upcoming, but you can get him as maybe a bit of a discount. So you want to talk about your player here, Armin?
Yeah, my player is TJ Hawkinson, tight end for the Minnesota Vikings. Irv Smith Jr. was back during that game, and he had a few plays thrown his way, but it was the TJ Hawkinson show from the get-go, and he actually led the Vikings in receiving yards because they were really keying in on Jefferson, and it just goes to show how good Hawkinson is. There's always been hype around him. I didn't start buying into the hype until probably near the end of this season. He was always kind of up and down to me, and it wasn't consistent enough, and now this season he started having big gains, and then on his down games, they're not as far down as they used to be. And it's a good offense, good offensive system in Minnesota. Just wish it was a different guy throwing him the ball.
There might be. There still might be next year, and there's still hope for you. Mine could have been a riser and a faller in the same game. In the first half, I was like, oh my God, I just promoted this guy on the podcast and he absolutely dunked on me by throwing 4 interceptions. But then he turned it on in the second half and threw 4 TDs and 288 yards, and as well as a 2-point conversion. And that is Trevor Lawrence. I talked about him and possibly being a little bit of a sneaky pick coming down the stretch in drafts next year. He also had 1 rush for 8 yards, which was kind of nice to see that little bit of mobility. I'd like to see it more consistently because he's a guy that he's no Hurts by any means. He's not going to be rushing probably 8-9 times a game. But if he can get 2 or 3, maybe even 4 rushes a game where he gets out of the pocket and picks up those 6-7 yard chunkers, those are just nice additions to your fantasy line. But he couldn't have looked worse in the first half and couldn't have looked better in the second half. And nice thing about Trevor Lawrence is he's still undefeated on Saturdays. Never lost a football game on Saturdays his entire career, which is kind of a fun little stat line. He's a guy that I'm going to be targeting, and I know I talked about on the pod, I think 2 episodes ago or an episode, I can't remember exactly how long ago now, but that's a stack that I'll be really interested, whether it's him and Evan Ingram, whether it's him and Christian Kirk, whether it's him and Zay Jones, whether it's him and names escaping me from Atlanta, hasn't played in 2 years. Zachary, I know you got him on your dynasty rosters.
Ridley,
Calvin.
Whether it's him, Calvin Ridley, there'll be some sort of stack that I'm going to have on a lot of teams. That's Trevor Lawrence and insert name. It's a little bit more risky on those late round picks. Like I said, he's not the mobile quarterback you can be getting later in drafts like we did with Hurts this past year, but somebody that can step up in a big moment like that and have as huge of a second half as he did. that's a guy that I think could, we've seen the trajectory this entire second half of the season has been unreal, especially with the emergence of Doug Peterson as the head coach. And speaking of, that guy's got the biggest balls I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, that guy is unbelievable. 4th and 1, and you run an end around with your season on the line. Like, that was unbelievable. I was sitting on my couch, by the way, smashed a huge parlay on that game, so I was pretty pumped. But he hit that end around, and I was just like, there's no way that's happened. And I saw him hand the ball off, and I was like, there's no way. There's no way. And then they got that seal on the edge, and I was like, oh my God, he might score. He might score. And then ends up going down on, I don't know, what was it, the 11 or the 15? I can't remember. And they kicked the field goal. But yeah, Doug Peterson, my God, good for you. That's that guy's got balls of steel. But coming back to where I was going, Trevor Lawrence. Riser and a faller, but riser nonetheless. Going into our weekly recap here, studs and duds. Let's I know Armin, you mentioned this guy already. We'll start with you.
All right. My stud of the week is Dalton Schultz. He had 2 tutties and almost 100 yards on the game. And he's a guy that all season long hasn't been quite living up to the hype of last season, and then in the clutch playoff game, he shows up and he leads the Cowboys to victory. If you had him, especially in DFS, there he was pretty cheap, and he definitely helped seal a victory for me in our little competition here.
Oh yeah, did he ever? Zach, your stud of the week. This guy could have went into our most previous section there, a little QB controversy, but let's hear your stud of the week.
Yeah, Brock Purdy is continuing to play beyond his years and beyond his experience and beyond his place on the depth chart up until a few weeks ago. Brock Purdy this week, 60% completion, 332 yards, 3 touchdowns, only 1 sack. And I think the most impressive play of that game was a pretty short completion there, but it's the one that went for 74 yards by Debo. Just kind of highlighting how well that offense works for him. When he plays within the system, he just hits the open receiver, lets them run with the ball, and they make the plays for him. So not a physically gifted player, or as physically gifted player as somebody like Hurts or even like Herbert or Mahomes, but the perfect guy for that system, and he might take a few people's jobs come next season.
There was one play, I can't remember exactly what quarter it was, but it was I can't remember if it was the red zone or if it was right around that area, but he went through his complete reads, scanned the whole field, reads weren't there, checked down on like a kind of like almost like a swing route to McCaffrey. It started as a swing and maybe it was like it came back to the ball on a check down, but it was like, you could tell he was going through his reads, completely scans the whole field, finds his check down, and then McCaffrey scampers in for a touchdown, or he got tackled on the one. I can't remember exactly how the play ended up, but it was just that play stood out to me. It was like, that's a veteran play. Like, you are playing for your playoff lives right now. They were in a ball game against Seattle. Like, that was for the first half at least, and it kind of the game got carried away. But like, he could have easily lost that game for San Francisco, but he stepped up to the plate. Like you said, he managed the game well, and he was making really good decisions. And that play stood out to me big time. Like, that's a veteran play. There's veteran quarterbacks in the NFL that can't make that decision. There's veteran quarterbacks in the NFL that don't scan the whole field and still decide to check the ball down for 3 yards when you're 4th and 9. But I mean, that's so we'll leave that one for Armin's 2 cents. But I couldn't agree with you more on that one. He had a great game, and I think that's, if he continues to manage the game well and make smart decisions, do not give the game away. I think the 49ers are in a good position to make a very deep run. My stud of the week, and once again, kind of a tale of 2 different halves, because in the first half, Gabe Davis's involvement was very minimal. And he stepped up big time in the second half. I think he had a big play towards the end of the first half, but then large involvement in the entire second half. And he was a guy that I was thinking, man, like, what is happening with Gabe Davis? He's kind of had an up and down season, boomer bust kind of guy. Obviously, we've seen the production he had last year in the playoffs. And I was thinking, like, there is so much involvement from these scrubby wide receivers. Like, they literally picked up a wide receiver that retired last year, picked him up 2 weeks ago, and he's getting more involvement than Gabe Davis right now. Like, this is mind-boggling and very frustrating. And then he steps up to the plate for 6 receptions, 113 yards, and a touchdown. And I was like, oh, well, there's Gabe Davis. There's that boomer bust I was talking about. And he did very well for me in my DFS lineups, which was nice to see because we'll get to that segment here shortly. But for a large portion of my team underperformed. But Gabe Davis stepped up to the plate and had himself a very nice second half. And hopefully looking to build off that this upcoming week because they're going to need all weapons go because that offense looked not ideal, and you're going to be going against a very solid Cincinnati team. So I think they're going to have to get that offense polished up in a hurry. So Gabe Davis is going to have to continue that that trajectory and giving a deep option for Josh Allen. Now going into our next segment here, we're going to go into our playoff pick'ems. And before we get there, if you're going to want to pick anything, you're going to want to pick this promo code 306FFB15 when you go to 22fresh.com. I've always been a big fan of 22 Fresh. Love their stuff. Love how comfy it is. Like how it looks. And I just, as I'm at school, I'm noticing there's so many kids that wear 22 Fresh. Like it's just become so popular. Obviously, like I said, it looks good. It feels good. It's comfortable wear. So if you're on there and shopping, I actually had a friend message me and sent me the promo code, and they were on the discount section on like the whatever it's called, the outlet sale. And then they used the promo code on top of that. They had their sweats on sale for $5, and then you can use the promo code on top of that. So getting yourself some nice 22 Fresh gear at a nice reasonable price with the addition of a 306 FFB15 promo code. So check out 22fresh.com or get involved in some of our charity opportunities because we got lots of gear to give away to our listeners. So thank you very much, 22 Fresh, for being our major sponsor of the 2022 NFL season. Playoff pick'ems. I think we did pretty good last week. Actually, so far, I know on the pod we talked about LA versus Jacksonville, and I said LA, and then I pivoted after the podcast, made my bracket Jacksonville, and smashed 6 for 6. So doing pretty good on that fashion. We'll see if we can get some 4 for 4s this week on some of our playoff matchups. So the first one we got is Kansas City is playing their first playoff game. Obviously, they had the bye week last week, and they're going to be taking on the come from behind Jacksonville Jaguars. And this one, we'll start with Zach. Zach, where are you going with this one? You taking KC or are you taking the upset?
I'm going to go with the home team, Kansas City Chiefs. While I don't expect Trevor Lawrence to throw 4 interceptions again in the first half, the Chiefs are not the same as the Chargers, and I believe the Chiefs will make you pay dearly for any mistakes that you make. And I'm not sure if the Jaguars are going to be able to play a perfect football game that will be required to beat the Chiefs.
Armin, where are you going with this one?
I'm sticking with the Chiefs. I said them before, and as nice as it would be, as great of a story as it would be for Jacksonville to win, and I'm probably more cheering for Jacksonville in this game. I just think that Chiefs firepower will be too much for that defense to handle, and they just don't quite have the same firepower to keep up in a track meet with KC as some other teams in the AFC do.
I'm gonna go bracket buster here. I'm going Jacksonville, and for a few reasons. Like there's no if there is obvious reasons, then KC wouldn't be the clear favorites on the betting lines. But I'm gonna take Jacksonville for the upset for a few things. A team that can be that explosive in a second half of football, they're going to be able to put up points. Even if this is a track meet, Jacksonville can put up points. They clearly couldn't do it in the first half, but their ability to put up 30 points or 24 points in the second half while a team's trying to prevent defense against you, that team can put up points. But Jacksonville's defense is very, very good, but they're young. So that can work in one of two ways. The inexperience can bite them in the ass and they can panic and KC can squash them. Or that young and experienced can just go out, play football, and don't know any better. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for in this Jacksonville lineup. That defense is fun, they're explosive, and they're good. And I'm hoping they just go out there, play ball against a good team, and crazier things have happened. With a good offense, a good defense, young team with just kind of go out there and play mindset, and a team that's their trajectories continue to go up during the right time of the season. That's how some of these upsets can happen. And I'm gonna put my money on Jacksonville on this one and hope for a kind of a huge upset and a bracket buster. Buffalo, Cincinnati. So we got the 1, 2, 3, 4 here in the entire AFC. We got Buffalo 2 hosting Cincinnati 3. And we got a bit, once again, we got 2 of the same and 1 different. And maybe we'll start with Armand on this one. Armand, you going Cincy, you going Buff?
All right, I'm going with the Bengals for this one. The Buffalo Bills may have the better record. They may have a little bit better on paper, but I think I trust the Bengals better in that clutch moment, in those clutch moments over Buffalo, and that's why I'm picking Cincinnati. Is Joe Burrow in that clutch moment, game on the line, he's gonna make the right decision, like 9 out of 10 times. Whereas Josh Allen, you can't trust him quite as much, and same goes for the defenses, right? The Cincinnati defense is just a little bit more clutch than that Buffalo defense, I think, in my mind. And so that's why I'm going Bengals.
And Zach, where are you going?
I'm going to go with my Super Bowl pick from the preseason, as well as my Super Bowl pick from just a few weeks ago, the Buffalo Bills. I think the last couple of weeks have been an absolute roller coaster for the Bills. Coming out of the DeMar Hamlin injury game. And I think they still may have been a little bit not themselves against the Dolphins. Came out to a pretty big lead initially, and they may have made the mistake of letting their foot off the gas a little bit. So I'm hoping that for my sake and my bracket's sake, that the Bills play their brand of football and they are able to outpace the Bengals.
So I'm going Cincy. That's my Super Bowl pick. I assumed this matchup would happen, whereas Buffalo versus Cincinnati, and I'm going Cincy. But I think it's a sense, kind of a little combination what Armin was going with, and I think it's also goes to combination what Zach had said. I think it's going to be a continuation of that. Even before the DeMar Hamlin thing incident there, the Buffalo offense has looked pretty sloppy down the stretch. Josh Allen's been turning the ball over like crazy, making poor decisions. We've seen Stephon Diggs almost put up a goose egg down the stretch in those last couple of weeks. So it's not an offense that's clicking, and it's almost a tale of 2 different stories. I'm very pro Jacksonville right now because they're coming together at the right time, and I'm anti Buffalo right now because their offense hasn't looked great to me down the second half of the NFL season. The defense can get things done. They can turn the ball over, but really so can Cincinnati. And right now I'm going to give it to the offense that can be super explosive and can be consistent like Cincinnati, even though they didn't necessarily do that against Baltimore. But the matchup between Baltimore and Cincinnati has always been a slugfest. It hasn't been a shootout. I can't see Cincinnati losing to Buffalo if they're going to be as sloppy as they have been in the past. That game was significantly closer than it needed to be against Miami, and that was against a quarterback that was making drastic mistakes, miss hits, overthrows. Skylar Thompson looked pretty poor, and Joe Burrow will be able to capitalize on some of those mistakes where Skylar Thompson was unable to. So I do think this is going to be a fun ball game. I do think it's going to be a high-scoring ball game, but I'm going to give the edge to Cincinnati. Going to the NFC here, once again, we got the number 1 team coming off their bye week, and we got the Philadelphia Eagles taking on divisional rivals, the New York Giants. And this one, I think, is going to be a lot of fun. But where are we going? We'll start with Zach on this one. Where are we going, Philadelphia or are we going Giants?
I am looking for just a complete and utter domination, I think, by the Eagles against the Giants. I think the Giants played almost as well as they could have against the Vikings. And let's not get it twisted here. The Eagles and the Vikings are 2 different caliber of teams. It should be a fun game, I think, but I'm thinking that the Eagles should win quite easily.
How dare you say that about my Vikings?
Armin, where are you going with this one?
I'm going with Zach. I'm sticking with the Eagles for this one. I was pretty confident the Vikings would not lose to the Giants because I didn't think the Giants were very good. And yeah, Philly is a better team than the Vikings. I'll admit that. So if the Giants end up winning this, you gotta say Dable is a mastermind. He's some kind of coaching guru, magician. I don't know, but yeah, go Go Giants. See if you can take out the Kings of the NFC this year. But woof.
The New York Giants have not won in Philadelphia since October 27th of 2013. So if that tells you anything, if you're a betting man, maybe you're gonna bet with history here. But I think Zach said it well. I don't see the Giants playing any more perfect than they did against the Vikings. It couldn't have been a more perfect game for them. They played so well. Offense was clicking, defense played well. And that game in 2013, the final score was 15-7, and that's going to be after the score if the Giants want to win. I'm going Philadelphia here, even though this would be a fun game. This is going to be a fun upset if it does happen. I just can't see Philadelphia losing to the Giants. They're going to have to play as near of a perfect game against them as they would have to, like they did against the Vikings. I just can't see them, Daniel Jones, playing 2 perfect games in a row, because if he did that, we wouldn't be talking about if Daniel Jones is re-signing or not, because you'd already have a nice little contract. So I'm going Philadelphia on this one, but I do think this is going to be a fun ball game. And our last one of the evening, last one of the divisional setup here, we got the number 2 San Francisco taking on the number 5 Dallas Cowboys. And talking about a near perfect game here, shy of the kicker fiasco, Dallas played a perfect game against Tampa Bay. They might, I know if Zach or Armand, I'll place the football. You guys kick it. Dallas might sign us here. So let's get out there in the snow and start practicing, because my goodness, I've never seen it. I saw a tweet and I laughed so hard. I've never seen a team make winning look so bad, or make winning look so difficult, because how do you go 1 of 5 on PATs? I don't know, that's something different. But where are we going on this one here? We'll start. Zach, are you taking Dallas? Are you taking San Francisco?
Got to go with San Fran. I watching them play on Saturday, very impressive. So going to go with the 49ers.
Armand, are you staying status quo, or are you going a little contrarian?
I'm staying status quo with this one. I think this one could be the makings of a fun game, but yeah, both teams are good offensively and defensively. It's just San Fran is just a cut above in all aspects over Dallas, so you got to take San Fran.
I'm taking San Fran as well. I think Armin, you said it best there. This could be a real fun game, but this is the best we've seen Dak Prescott play in probably 3 years. Like, he played unbelievable. He's usually due for 2 ridiculous interceptions a game. And that might be something we see against a stout San Francisco defense. But Dak is going to have to play as perfect as he did this last one if we want to see any sort of competition against San Francisco. But I'm going with you guys, San Francisco as well. Continuing on here, we got our DFS, our last segment of the episode. And if you were like us, this really sucked. Sorry for us promoting on FanDuel if you ended up following our footsteps. But FanDuel had a little bit of a technical malfunction, and their DFSs that were submitted for the Saturday lineup or Saturday-Sunday combo, if you're doing those as well, they ended up being canceled, and then the money was returned. And if you put one in, I think most people got a $5 free entry for an upcoming DFS lineup, if so. But so sorry about that, but this made it kind of confusing for us and difficult, because we couldn't follow our own matchups, because it was, well, we knew he had this guy, he played well, but this guy played bad. How many did he play worse than my guy? There's no way of kind of keeping track of it throughout the weekend like we normally would. But Zach was a generous soul here and actually calculated all the points for us, which was really nice of him. It was also really nice of him to put my name dead last, so thanks for doing that, Zach. We knew Armin had smashed us. His lineup was unbelievable, putting up 130 points. And then Zach got second with 112, and I was last with 108. So we told you Armand is the the king of DFS this year, and he showed us, because he put up a whopping 130 points this week. So looking to build off that, like we said, the loser of these brackets, or the loser of this DFS, is going to be spinning the wager wheel at the end of the season. So Armin off to a commanding lead to avoiding that wheel, and I'm dragging my ass here in last place. So hopefully to bounce back here in the divisional matchup. So Armin, as the winner of last week, do you want to start us off with your quarterback of the week?
Yeah, you bet. I ended up spending a little bit more money this week, changing my strategy up, and I went Jalen Hurts for $9,000. I wanted the dual threat quarterback, and didn't trust the cheaper one in Daniel Jones in this divisional matchup.
Yeah, I think you're perking up some ears there, because Zach, you want to tell us your quarterback?
I went with the cheaper of the two quarterbacks there in that matchup, and I went with Daniel Jones. I based my entire lineup around this decision. Jones had 2 TDs through the air, and he had 78 yards on the ground. I think that right there, that rushing bonus that he offers is something that I think is going to, I don't know, make up for any inefficiencies that he might have as a passer.
Yeah, Russian quarterbacks are king. You say it all the time. So this one I kind of flip-flop back and forth, and it was between the exact 2 names I talked about last week. It was Trevor Lawrence or Joe Burrow. And I like Joe Burrow and I like Trevor Lawrence because I have them both projected to win, and they're both guys that have weapons and air the ball lots. Joe Mixon has had a very up and down season, but consistency is not the word to use for Joe Mixon because Joe Burrow has been throwing the ball a ton. And Trevor Lawrence, you saw what he's capable of in just a second half of football. Four touchdowns and 288 rushing yards or receiving yards, sorry. So I'm going to go with Trevor Lawrence, take the $400 discount, and I took Trevor Lawrence at $7,600 in that matchup against KC. This may seem like a bit of a head scratcher, but I have the Jaguars at least competing with KC, and I also have them beating KC. So Trevor Lawrence is going to get it done because it's not going to happen on the ground with ETN. Running backs. This one, we see a little bit of commonality between a couple of us here, but Armin, start us off here. Who's your 2 backs you got in your starting lineup?
All right, so I shelled out for QB and my 1 wide receiver there, so I had to go a little bit cheaper on the RB side, and I went with Jerick McKinnon, who was on a heater at the end of the season, and hopefully he continues that heater going into the playoffs here as the check down artist for the Chiefs at $7,000, which I think is a pretty good deal considering the ceiling he has, especially at the end of the season there. And then I went with the bargain of James Cook at $5,800. Just 1 touchdown from him. He's showing that he is more of the guy in the passing game situations. And with Cincinnati and Buffalo hopefully going toe-to-toe all game long, we shouldn't see Buffalo running the ball a whole ton, and we should see James Cook in the passing game a little bit more.
Oh, there's going to be a good battle between you and Zach here. Zach, who you want to talk about your running backs here, as you and Armin kind of have a similar but different mindset?
Yeah, so for the one, my starter, I guess my stud in my lineup, I went with CMC. Cost me quite a bit, $9,200, but I was able to afford that with the discount I took on Jones earlier at quarterback. I think McCaffrey is unquestionably the most talented running back left in the playoffs, and seeing what he did this weekend, I'm expecting to see some of that again against Dallas. And then my second running back, I went with the more talented running back in Buffalo, Devin Singletary, and that the extra talent only cost me an extra $100. He's at $5,900. We saw last game against the Dolphins that even when the Bills were up, they chose to pass. And I think that got them into some trouble. Hopefully they realize the error of their ways and they go to the ground a little bit more. And that is to the benefit of Singletary.
No way. It's a Bills MO. They're passing all game long.
This is literally one of you are going to succeed in this. I'd be really funny if neither of you do, and like the ghost of Zach Moss, all of a sudden somebody else steps up to the plate and Nyheim Hines has a huge
Hines, yeah,
ridiculous, like I would have a good chuckle and help me out in a big way at least. So I went with Armand on the Jerick McKinnon. Actually, I took 2 guys from KC, Jerick McKinnon being one, and then I have another one. I'll talk about my flex. There are 2 of the guys that have become the most involved in the offense in Kansas City. We've seen Travis Kelce kind of take a backseat a little bit, almost more as a decoy in the last down the stretch for that Kansas City offense. So I like Jerick McKinnon's involvement here. There's talks that Clyde Edwards-Helaire might be coming off the IR and to something to monitor. I mean, we've seen what they think of Clyde Edwards-Helaire this season, and I can't imagine it comes off the IR and all of a sudden they give him a massive workload. So Jerick McKinnon, I like him. And I also like Miles Sanders at $7,200. It's a very run-first offense. And when they get into the red zone, Miles Sanders has done some awesome work this season. So I'm going to jump on Miles Sanders at $7,200 and go on a team that likes to rush the ball. So Miles Sanders, $7,200 on my lineup. Going into wide receivers there, Armin, you want to talk about yours?
Yeah, you betcha. So my first wide receiver, I decided to continue the Philly stack and went AJ Brown at $8,300. And I like him in this. He's gonna be wanting to win this game. He's a competitor with a lot of fire. Next one I went with Juju Smith-Schuster from KC for $6,600, which I thought was not a bad deal for the kind of the wide receiver one for KC, even though they do spread the ball around a lot. Juju could end up having a big game, and 6,600 seems like a pretty good deal. And then my cheaper guy, the bargain bin hunting that I did for wide receiver, was Tyler Boyd from Cincinnati for $5,600. A bit of a risk there, but his range of outcomes is from like putting up next to nothing to putting up like a Jamar Chase level performance. He's a boomer bust kind of guy, and just hoping in the playoffs where they're trying to take away the big threats that Tyler Boyd ends up sneaking in and getting some big points.
He's a sneaky guy that I always kind of consider throwing in for like as a dart throw in my DFS lineups, just because it's always like, oh man, Kate, good. Joe Burrow threw a touchdown. Who got it? Oh, great, Tyler Boyd. And it's like I've done that more than one, more than two, twice, more than three times this season. So sneaky guy that can find himself in the into the end zone there.
Yeah.
Kate, continuing on here. We'll go Zach's wide receivers, and once again a battle between you and Armand on same teams, different players. We'll see who steps at the plate here. Zach, who's your three wide receivers?
All right, my three wide receivers. I guess we'll just go to the one that you mentioned. I took Devonta Smith, $7,200. While I do agree with Armin that AJ Brown is probably the more physically gifted, I don't think Smith is that or considerably less talented than Brown. And at the price difference, 83 to 72, I took Smith, who's been quite hot lately, or rather quite hot before Hurts went to the sidelines and Mr. Mustache guy there went in. And my two other receivers are guys that I think I certainly paid up for a little bit, but hopefully they pay off for me. Jamar Chase had a huge game for the Bengals, and he's at 85. And then CD Lamb had a bit of a disappointing game on Monday for the Cowboys, but I think he's one that hopefully will bounce back, and I could see him having a pretty big game, close to double digit receptions, 80, 90, 100 yards and a touchdown isn't out of the question, and he is 7,800.
Well, we're going to trifecta. So if Cincinnati scored the touchdown, we're all three going to be glued to the TV because we got Tyler Boyd, we got Jamar Chase, and I'm going back to the well with T. Higgins. In this one, T. Higgins got a nice little discount, sitting at $7,000. So he's kind of right slap dab in the middle between Chase and Boyd, kind of what you would imagine. But T. Higgins has that upside, much the same as Chase does, comparison to Boyd, in my opinion. So I wanted a piece of that offense, so I'm jumping on the Higgins bandwagon. I also went with Zach with Devonta Smith at 7,200, and mine was more thoughts of, he's a possession wide receiver, so I'm hoping he can PPR and yak it up. While Miles Sanders might be able to go to bat with the rushing touchdowns. AJ Brown is kind of the big play, big touchdown kind of receiver, so I didn't want to put him in the lineup and have Miles Sanders on somebody who I'm hoping to capitalize on some touchdowns. So I like the little combination between Devonta Smith and Miles Sanders in there. And then I went with my big wide receiver, my starting wide receiver of the week. I went with Stephon Diggs at 8,200. He had a really nice week this past week, and I did mention that I think this game is going to go back and forth, and Stephon Diggs is a primary target, and I think he's going to have some big PPR action and some big plays, and hopefully if they score any touchdowns in that game, they're going to go Stephon Diggs' way.
Now, I like how we all take Cincinnati receivers, and none of us took Joe Burrow.
Hey, I at least said I was considering him, but I want to play stack here. So I'll talk about stack. There's no Jacksonville wide receivers in there, so I can only foreshadow where I'm going with my tight end position. But Armin, your tight end of the week.
All right, I'm continuing a stack. I'm going to Dallas Goedert. When he was healthy at the beginning and midseason there before his injury, he was forcing Devontae Smith to take a little bit of a back seat there. So I am going with him, and he's only $6,300, which can compared to the top end tight ends is pretty cheap. But looking at you guys, I'm the big spender on tight end this week compared to you guys.
Which is kind of funny because like he's not an expensive tight end at all in the
No.
grand scheme of things. We all went.
No, like I think Kelsey was like what, $8,000 or something, and so was Kittle. It was wild.
Yeah, it was an expensive one, and I don't think there's been a time where we've all gone bargain hunting. But Zach, let's hear yours.
I mentioned earlier that Daniel Jones was, in a sense, the centerpiece of this lineup. So here is where I start stacking skill players around him. I took the tight end for the Giants, Daniel Bellinger, who is a real bargain at 4,900. Somebody that hasn't had huge games, but he's somebody that just this past week scored a touchdown. So looking for just a cheap little touchdown again would be gravy for Daniel Bellinger.
That was a name I really considered in that one, but I wanted the stack, and actually kind of funny, all three of us went tight end quarterback stack. And I went Evan Ingram. He dunked last week, which was kind of a plus matchup against the Chargers, and he's been a guy that they've relied on heavily down the stretch. And going against another against another defense, Kansas City, that is a plus matchup for tight ends, and they are number 10 in the NFL for points given up to the tight end position. And that's a nice little plus because I have Lawrence. I want the stack, and it's going to go to a guy that they've relied on down the stretch. Big plays, Evan Ingram, PPR. I think there's a lot of positivity that we can go with Evan Ingram. I do like taking the big names, but Kelsey just hasn't been producing much. Kittle had a couple big weeks down the stretch, but last week kind of got phased out in that offense. So hit and miss. So I'm going to go to a guy that I think has a solid floor and a high ceiling, which sounds kind of funny to say, Evan Ingram, but that's Evan Ingram, $6,000.
The tight ends went off last week, and I noticed that looking at all the stats, and when we were doing stud there, I was looking and I was like, there's like 3 or 4 tight ends who could be studs and not many RBs or wide receivers. It was
Hawkinson, Knox. We had yours was Schultz, mine was Ingram. I'm trying to think of some of the other, like it was just tight end, like so many touchdowns to the tight end position.
Yeah.
I think even what's his name there from Chargers? I think he had a touchdown too. Everett. I think he had.
Yeah, Everett went off. I think he had over 100 yards too.
Tight end wasn't Fant, but it was the other one in Seattle. He had a touchdown. Was it Parkinson?
Yeah, Parkinson.
Yeah, it was tight end week. But flex time, Armin. Who do you got?
All right. I was able to spend up a little bit more on my flex. Saved a little bit of money with Tyler Boyd and James Cook there, and I'm going back to the well that I did last week with Deebo Samuel and hoping he can reproduce again and keep it going because he's still a little bit cheaper, bit more expensive than he was last week, but they still have him cheap on these DFS lineups right now for who the guy is. Put a little respect on his name, FanDuel. Come on.
He had a great week. It's nice to see him bounce back a little bit too.
Yeah.
Zach, where did you go with your flex?
I went with a household name, Richie James Jr. Everybody knows who I'm talking about.
On this podcast we do.
Wide receiver for the New York Giants, spending big on the starting 3 receivers and one of my running backs. I needed a discount, and I found one in Richie James, and he completes the stack with Daniel Jones and Daniel Bellinger.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that you have the Giants losing this one based on your lineup, Zach.
Well, I think it's going to be like a shootout, and I just hope that Daniel Jones can spread the ball around in an attempt to keep up.
I mentioned that I went KC with this pick just when I was talking about my McKinnon pick, and I went with Kadarius Toney. He's a guy that's been pretty interesting in this offense. There's no wide receiver that steps up and has big games, and he's one of the cheaper options. So it's kind of like a revolving door. But Kadarius Toney's involvement is interesting. And against Jacksonville in Week 10, he put up 15 fantasy points, had a decent week, 4 receptions, 57 yards, and a touchdown. Then he also got a little sprinkle in the rushing game, 33 rushing yards as well. So I think this is going to be an interesting play. it's not, by no stretch of the imagination, a slam dunk. That's why he's as cheap as he is, sitting there at $5,800. But I think in an offense that's going to have to move the ball, and they're going to game plan around, Travis Kelce and some of the, the more consistent options. Find Kadarius Toney might get a little bit of involvement through not only the rushing game, but also some of those little check downs and quick hitters that you can get some yak yards. So I'm hoping that maybe Kadarius Toney can sneak something in there for me, as he's had a decent little stretch with Casey as he's coming back from injury.
Finally, I really liked that one when I saw it. I almost picked him myself, and I just didn't have the guts to do what you did, Jordan. And he is a guy that, like, you talk about the Chiefs replacing Tyreek Hill. Maybe not this year during the playoffs, but next year he could be that guy, right? Because he had a lot of comps to Tyreek Hill, just like Waddle did coming out of the draft.
He's kind of sneaky. I'm pretty interested in him next year for the draft, and he's actually one of the top guys I'm looking at possibly pursuing in the offseason in Dynasty, because I think depending on what happens, obviously during the playoffs here, if he pops off, it's not going to happen. But if he continues just a slow upward trajectory, then he's a guy that I'm going to be pretty interested in. But like you said, if he pops off here and blows up DFS lineups, then you ain't picking him up. Like trying to get Gabe Davis in the offseason last year, it was a lot harder than one would expect. So wrapping things up here with our last position, we got our DST. Armand, where are you going?
All right, so I ended up having a little bit more money for my defense than I thought I would, and I ended up going with the Chiefs for this one. When it comes to how many good offenses there are in this week, it's really tough to actually pick a defense that might actually do well. So I picked the Chiefs because they're going against a younger offense than some of the other teams, a offense that is a little less polished and a little less forged in the fires of the playoffs, as one would say. So I'm hoping they can come up with a few opportunistic plays and be a defense. And just my two bargain bin hunting guys that I got allowed me to kind of have my pick of the defenses besides San Fran. I just didn't have enough money for San Fran.
There you go. Zach, one could guess on who you took as your DST. I'm sure it probably populates 75% of your starting lineup here, but where'd you go with your DST?
Yeah, I had no money left, and in the wise words of Carrie Underwood, Jesus take the wheel. We're going with the Giants here. They're the only defense that I could afford. I thought about going with Darius Slayton at flex and saving couple extra $100 to maybe get a possibly better matchup there than the Giants, but even getting a discount there, I couldn't get a better defense. So going with the Giants, hopefully Hurts first game back, maybe a little bit rusty, maybe fumbles the ball. I don't know. Just can't have the Eagles scoring 50 points here. That's what we're hoping for.
Watch that 15-7 game with a pick six, and Zach's absolutely giggling with the Giants as the DST of the week. Like, that's how people win DSTs, and it's sickening, but it's going to happen. Like, 15-7 is not going to be good for the rest of your team there, Zach. So maybe open my own.
This was basically like the Jackie Moon scene from Semi Pro, where he's like, we had a laundry machine. They needed a laundry machine. The Giants had a defense. I needed a defense. It was just match made in heaven.
That's an underrated movie. Right when you said that Jackie Moon scene, I pictured him like laying in the garbage can eating like moldy pancakes, but you get a stomach ache like Armin. So maybe we'll see the other scene. My defense, I went with the Bengals. I'm just hopefully capitalizing on sloppy offense play like the Bills had. They had the second most turnovers next to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who threw 4 of them in the first half. But Buffalo gave the ball up a ton, and the Bengals have they're a plus defense, and hoping that they can capitalize on some of that sloppy play from Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills from this past week in this matchup. And they were pretty cheap in a sense. They were $3,400. I think they were like one of the lower end, obviously not Giants low, but they were one of the lower end ones on the DSTs. And against Buffalo, they can put up tons of points, but they can also give up pick sixes, which is very helpful, obviously, for your DST. I guess that kind of does it for us here, and with our, the divisional matchup here. But anything else to throw in here, fellas, before we wrap this one up? Episode number 77. No.
Let's take down the Giants. Let's go. I'm all in against the Giants now after seeing Zach's lineup.
Yeah,
Go Philly.
I need a bounce back here. So that's gonna do it for episode number 77. Stay tuned. We got some fun things coming down the pipe here involving our Super Bowl watch party. That's gonna be a fun one if you attended last year, or if you got to see it on socials and thought, oh man, that'd be awesome. Well, stay tuned. We're gonna have some more information for that coming up. We got 2 football games Saturday, 2 football games Sunday. So have some fun watching football. Get in there on the old sports investing or the DFS lineups and have a little fun with us. If not, just kick back, put those feet up, and watch some playoff football. So have fun, everybody. Thanks for listening to episode number 77. Stay tuned for our next episode next week, and take care, and let's talk soon.